I'm very curious, but his favorite movie is going to bestow upon us. It's from 1973.
So here it is. It's called The Spirit of the Beehive. Has anyone ever seen that?
I have not seen that.
What's the buzz on that?
So when I first heard about it, I heard just online that this was like the best film ever made. This is by Victor Arice. He's the filmmaker. And I was like, okay, I have to see it. They showed like a rare screening on TCM several years ago. And I watched it, and I was like, yeah, this is probably the best rendition of a monster movie. And it's pretty much about a girl who sees Frankenstein at a theater, and she's...
Just hanging out.
Huh?
Just hanging out.
Okay.
Oh, no, Frankenstein, the movie with me.
The old Frankenstein.
Oh, okay, I thought she saw Frankenstein at the concession stand and
So the movie follows, it follows her experience after watching that movie and how affected she is by that film and just cinema in general.
Did she get a beehive hairdo?
No, but the beehive part, because I was wondering, like, why is it titled that? I didn't understand it until really afterwards. But anyway, her parents, her family is just in a muck. There's a war. It's in wartime, and she goes off thinking she can find this monster, thinking the cinema is real. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but yeah, it's pretty much a take on the Frankenstein tale, except a girl finds him. You know, in the Frankenstein story where like he meets like a little girl, and she is kind of almost that little girl in a way. It's interesting.
She floats well.
And she doesn't die, though. But the rendition of it is very interesting, and I recommend those who just love monster movies in general should go see it. Back, I think, when I saw it, it was very rare, and they just restored it. The other reason why they call it Spirit of the Beehive, because the whole film, because films leave impressions on me, like a specific shot in a movie I can remember like years ago.
True. Yeah. So true.
And the impression of this one was the cinematography. A lot of it was orange. It was like almost sepia tone. Okay. And the windows, they look like the honeycombs of
So now we connect to the title.
And that's the impression I got off. It's like, why does this movie look like that? And it looks like honey. It looks like almost like these characters are stuck in a beehive. And I was like, that's a very fascinating concept. And I liked the movie even more after kind of understanding that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, you should go watch
Spirit
it.
of the Beehive.
Mexico's contribution to film technology, Hivovision.
Hivovision.
There you go.
And it's considered to be one of the most beautiful films. That's a good one of the most beautiful films. So definitely go see it.
I wrote it down.
And this director's, I think he only made one film.
Really?
So he only made one film in his lifetime. It's considered one of the best ever made.
Movies are powerful.
Yeah.
They do leave impressions that last a lifetime, and it can be a horror film or any film. But for someone to make a movie that I haven't seen in 30 years and I can remember that as if it were yesterday, just indicates how powerful an art form the cinema can truly be from a visual sense. And what's really remarkable about a movie is that it can be horrible or it can be great. And when it is great, it's just amazing because think about it. It's not just one voice behind it. You have everybody in their field working together to make it work.
Yeah.
The sound man, the editor, the director, the performances. You can have movies where the direction is great, but the acting is horrible. You could have a great movie with a great cast and the whole thing's horrible because it's cut together wrong. That a movie is successful at all or leaves an impression is practically a miracle in each instance. And so we are so thrilled that sometimes things just work. Like Casablanca, really a B picture slapped together in a very fast amount of time. It's now considered an iconic classic. And it was, when it came out, it wasn't thought in those terms. It was late night TV that brought it to life. Also, late night TV in the 50s, 60s, and 70s is really what preserved the monster and horror culture for generations because people saw things that they hadn't seen before, like the Black Cat and other classics.
Right, and there's productions that...
The Vampire Bat.
Right, important productions like Hammer Horror Films, but there was also RKO back in the day would make...
the Cat Creeps.
Like Cat People and there's so many.
Those Val Lewton movies.
Val Lewton movies produced on like really low budgets, but they're amazing. They're really good. So they've always been there. And there's some of some of my favorite movies are the ones I actually didn't like the first viewing. Like I didn't understand 2001: A Space Odyssey when I first saw it.
Do you understand it
I was
now?
annoyed at well, in the sense that this is not a regular Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
It's not a regular like sci-fi Hollywood movie. So I honestly had to watch it maybe like 10 times, and by this fifth time, truly appreciated it a lot more. Actually, a lot of Kubrick's filmography was like that for me. But then they ended up being, my favorite films. So it's worth you just going into a movie because you think it's interesting, and don't go into it thinking it's going to be good or bad, which I think is a lot of modern audiences have that in their head.
That perception,
and you just go into it interested, and go back to it, revisit it if it's good or bad, in your opinion. If you find that, I always like watching movies because they're interesting. It's hard to just judge good or bad,
Yeah.
So
Speaking of interesting, this show has been so interesting for me. Guys, I want to thank you so much for having me along today.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.